It's been an unusual week inside the Lords this week because I've actually been not involved in hardly any debates. They've been almost like the end of term, rounding up lots of small pieces of legislation that I've not been involved in. And so I've used the opportunity to endlessly meet up with people and discuss future bills, future things that are happening. So, it's been actually less engaging in terms of politics. One thing that was interesting, though, I've been talking to quite a lot of the gender critical people, and I wanted to just note that I ended up having a cup of tea with Joanna Cherry. I don't know who was more surprised. As she pointed out, the last time we met we were kind of having a screaming match on Sky News over, guess what, Brexit many years ago. But it was actually it is incredible what's happened to Joanna Cherry in the SNP, and the fact that there's been a real attempt to cancel her and drive her out as an MP. And it was actually very nice as an act of solidarity to say that we would return to our arguments about Scottish nationalism, about Brexit, about the EU to another moment, but we were determined that no matter what happened we wouldn't allow the issue, as basic as it is, on biological sex to mean that we would fall out on any questions whatsoever. So united on that one, and with many other people as well. The other thing that's of course been a major cause of concern this week is the new variant on coronavirus, the I can't even say it, that one. What's been distressing genuinely to us all is the speed with which a risk aversion has set in. The precautionary principle has been deployed immediately that people were beginning to feel confident about going out and about, getting their lives together. Everything is suddenly closing down. No one's saying that we shouldn't be frightened of COVID in some way. One needs to take precautions, but the way that the government has behaved in terms of rushing through legislation, the regulations in terms of masking, the consequences of this, unintended though they might be, of meaning that school nativity plays are closing down, or being cancelled, Christmas parties are being cancelled, the Academy of Ideas Christmas party is not being cancelled. The way that people kind of immediately resort to a kind of panicky mode just means that a lot of damage is being done here, and it's the same week that we've had revealed the absolute potential human tragedy of cancer, undiagnosed patients queuing up, lining up, lots and lots of people's lives are now at risk because of an overreaction, I still think, to COVID. So we are trying to hold our nerve, not overreact, but not be glib about what we know is an important public health issue. At the Academy of Ideas we tried to do that. At the House of Lords all the talk has been panic, 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 mask up, mask up, mask up. But the truth is, lots of people in the House of Lords are having guests, are having visitors, or having big groups in to show them round. So in some ways it's a rhetorical attachment to panic, but in reality people behaving as normal. So I hope that we can get over that blip. But from a parliamentary point of view, the lack of democratic accountability is still as shocking as ever. I wanted to actually pay tribute to somebody that I didn't think I'd pay tribute to, which was Lord David Blunkett. He did something very unusual during the course of the committee stage of the Police and Crime Bill, where he was arguing that we should raise the age of criminal responsibility. He thought it had gone too low, and he, as the minister, was the person who'd actually lowered that age, and he said he'd made a mistake and it caused a major tragedy, that too many children were effectively being locked up and held to a criminal standard of an adult when they shouldn't have been. This was obviously in relation to the Jamie Bulger case, that shocking case of the 10-year-olds killing a toddler, and Blunkett was the Home Secretary. But it was just so unusual to hear a politician do a mea culpa and say that he was trying to now undo that and undo the law, and I thought that was an incredibly it's the way you'd want politicians to behave. He understood that there was unintended consequences of that, and so I wanted to note that. One of the things that's happened this week is that there's been the health and the social care, adult social care reform white paper has been announced. I've actually found it really dispiriting that there's been so much sectarian sniping over this. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the Tories have cracked this at all, but I've just actually been in a brief discussion on the issue, in which, rather than it being a kind of Labour versus Tory, which it has been all week, where there was some genuine contribution to people saying this is a bit of a technocratic vision, but we'd like to commend you for at least having brought the white paper out, because successive governments have failed to do anything about this. I think that the problem goes much deeper than who pays, and that there's a much larger conversation that needs to be had in the country about how we care for the elderly, how we deal with social care, not just numbers of staff, but the kind of calibre of the staff, how we ensure that they have time to really care for people. And so I don't want to just lash out at the Tories and say they've done the wrong thing with their particular technical proposals for whether you'll have to sell your house or not, but actually say I hope that this is the start of an ongoing proper practical resolution of the problem that allows a public debate, which is what I've just said. And actually, to be fair to the minister, he actually agreed with me and said, didn't claim it was all things to all people. I've just spoken at a debate on the BBC, and I've put up the copies of that on social media already. The funny thing was that it was Lord Melvyn Bragg who was sitting quite close to me, and I listened to his programme. Been listening to his programme for years and years and years, so I kind of was a bit starstruck. So it is quite funny in the House of Lords, because I've never seen him in there before, but there they are, the kind of these old famous people. But one of the things that was interesting that I didn't actually say at the time, doing the reading, a lot of people try and defend the BBC on the basis that it's incredibly important via the World Service for soft power. I just thought it was funny that there was loads of people who spoke kept saying this is important, this is the way that we influence countries all around the world. Every other institution is decolonising, but of course when it comes to the BBC, everyone forgets their woke credentials and starts basically recolonising via the BBC's soft power and saying this is how we influence countries far all over the place with our values. The thing that I also think we should note, though, is that if the BBC previously was a way of soft power and values being imported or exported around the world, the problem is the BBC don't know what values it's got anymore. They're certainly not British values that they're proud of. So there was quite a lot more that could have been said in that debate. Okay, finally, because I've got a busy week next week at the Lords, and I'll fill you in next week when I return. One of the main things that we've been doing at the Academy of the Ideas this week is finishing off and sending to the printer our Letters on Liberty, special set for Christmas. Ella Whelan, who's the commissioning editor, has done a great job getting 3 really good essays that I can't wait for you to read. One of them is actually on what COVID has done to us as a society, or the damage it's done to us as sociable beings, the impact it's had on our attitudes to freedom and liberty. It's bleak at times, but it's beautifully written. It's Josie Appleton, and really made me think about what's at stake for 2022, because we're coming to the start of a new year. We've got Phil Harrison, who is a writer and filmmaker, who's written a fantastic essay on how literature can seduce us. And as an English literature student, I thought it was incredibly important about the power of ideas, actually, and the power of writing. And again, beautifully written. It's got lots of references in there to novelists and writers that I am not familiar with, so actually it spurred me on to want to read them. And finally, we've got Harley Richardson, who's done a magnificent history of education and liberal education. Harley runs it's one of the people who runs the Academy of Ideas Education Forum, and this is a really masterful understanding historically over the centuries of why education as a liberal education for its own sake is the way out of so much. Because whenever I'm in any of these debates in the House of Lords, people are always saying, oh, maybe we can add something to the curriculum, use education as a vehicle for propagandising this, that or the other. And he stands firm on the importance of education in its own right. So I hope you're going to enjoy those. They'll be published next week, I think, and you can buy them for Christmas presents for everyone. But basically, keep your eyes out for those. See you inside the Lords next week.